Greetings and welcome to the Cancer Interviews podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Bruce Morton. You know, every cancer journey is different, but our guest on this episode has a story that distinguishes itself in that he didn't need somebody else to tell him he had cancer. He is Patrick Owen of Salem, Oregon. He is a survivor of renal cancer. Here he is. And Patrick, welcome to Cancer Interviews.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We always want to start off from the same place, and that's to learn a little bit more about our guest, who is you. So if you would, tell us a bit about your life exclusive of cancer, where you're from, what you do for a living, and when time allows for fun, what you do for fun.
Okay, that sounds great. Well, I've been moving west my whole life. I started in Syracuse, New York, moved to Rochester, New York, went to school in Cleveland, Ohio. My roommate and I were avid skiers. So we moved to Steamboat Springs, Colorado our senior year and got 3 hours credit for independent study and advanced skiing. And came back, graduated. Both of us moved back out there. I stayed 3 winters. Then I came to Portland, Oregon, and he's still there. Anyway, I came to Portland and I went back to college and I became a chiropractor. And I retired here 5 years ago as a chiropractor.
And for fun?
And for fun, I ski and scuba dive and travel. We travel, I've been in all 50 states and I've traveled many, many different countries around the world. And I love to scuba dive and ski.
By the way, if you like what you hear in this segment, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast by clicking the links below. Once there, you'll see a bell icon. If you click on that, we will notify you when we post a new interview. Patrick has mentioned the way you learned you had cancer distinguished itself because it didn't include a standard diagnosis. Tell us what happened.
So I told you I'm an avid skier. My wife and I, for Valentine's Day, I took her over to Bend, Oregon at Mount Bachelor. It's about 3 hours away. And bought a week's worth of tickets and came out into the parking lot, opened up the car door and started jamming my foot into my ski boot, and I fractured my right femur. It just snapped in half. And after I got done screaming, I told my wife, I have to have cancer because you don't break the strongest bone in your body putting on a ski boot. And I stood in the parking lot for an hour and a half, with the door open, standing on my left leg, holding on to my car door. And ski patrol came out, gave me 2 shots of morphine, didn't even touch it. They tried to lay me back on a backboard, but didn't stabilize my leg. And I started screaming like crazy again. And the ski patrol guy goes, "Did you hear those bones crunch?" I heard those bones crunching. And so an hour and a half later, they took me to the hospital. They put a rod in my right femur from my knee to my hip. And they did a PET scan and discovered that I had renal cell carcinoma.
So how does one develop or recognize a connection between a broken femur and renal cancer?
Well, that's what the PET scan was for, but from my experience, I just knew that you don't break the strongest bone in the body putting on a ski boot. So I knew I had to have cancer, but I didn't know where or how.
Well, once you found out this terrible news, did you have any treatment options? Different types of cancers will offer all manner of options, and some offer none. Did you have treatment options?
Well, I was very fortunate. My son was an ICU nurse, and his girlfriend worked for Oregon State Hospital University Health, the OSHU they call it, and they called around and they found two doctors. One was an orthopedic, because a lot of orthopedics won't touch bone cancer, and so they found me an orthopedic, and they also found me a cancer doctor. And so I went in and saw him, and there's a new treatment program called immunotherapy, which is different than chemotherapy, and it's good specifically for renal cell carcinoma and melanoma. And it was fairly new, so they didn't have a whole lot of research on it. But I started off seeing this doctor at Compass Cancer Center up in Portland, and they did 12 weeks of 2 different types of medications, infusions. I would go in and they would hook me up to IVs, and I did that every 3 weeks for 12 weeks. And then I went down to one drug once every 4 weeks, and I'm going to do that for 2 years.
Out of that treatment regimen, what would you say is the toughest part?
Actually, it's I view that you can have side effects with it, but I didn't have any of the side effects. So I was really blessed that way. You just go in once a month for an hour, originally 2 hours, but now just an hour. And they give you drinks and popcorn, and you sit there and play on my phone, and it's not too bad. So really, I've been really blessed. There wasn't anything major that I had. So,
Patrick, any of us who have experienced a cancer journey need support physically, mentally, emotionally. For you, in your cancer journey, from where did your support come?
Well, my wife has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. My kids have been phenomenal, having my son with a nursing degree, and then my son who's a pastor, and my daughter who lives close by with our grandkids. They've all been, they came over and helped set my house up. They helped, get me settled in. They've been calling and visiting constantly. They huge support. And then my church has been phenomenal. I had to have a medical transport from Bend back to Salem, and I called a buddy of mine. It was $1,500 to have a medical transport, and within 20 minutes, half an hour, he called me back. He goes, "I raised all the money for you. I just called all your church friends, and we've got the $1,500 for you." And I got back to home. Our church had put in, I was in a wheelchair. They'd put in a ramp so I could get into the house. They fixed up my bathroom so I could use the shower and the toilet. They, had prayer meetings for me. Just absolutely been amazing.
I would think that, I don't know about the physical part, but mentally and emotionally, I would think that all of the above, everything you've mentioned, had to have given you a tremendous boost.
Yes, exactly. And I've done mission fields in several different countries, so I've had people praying all over the world for me, and I have family and friends all over the U.S., and they've all been praying for me, and that's been a huge thing. And I get text messages and emails, huge amount of support all over the world.
So it sounds like to you, from where you sit, that prayer works.
Prayer definitely works. So 2 quick stories. One is that when the church was having a prayer meeting for me, I couldn't go because I was in a wheelchair and I was at home. So they did a FaceTime Zoom thing, and they put the pastor in a chair, and they all came over and laid hands on him and prayed for him. He was my surrogate. He was me. And his wife and another woman got a vision from God, seeing the cancer leaving my body. And so that was a huge thing that happened, true. And the other was that when we were in Kenya, my sister was worked over there for 3 years in a hospital, and got to know a young woman named Frida. And she emailed Frida, and we went over and met Frida. Met her twice. We went up to visit her house. It was a mud hut, 1 room, mud walls, mud floor, and I got to meet her. And when I came down with the cancer, my sister emailed her and told her what was happening, and she emailed me and said she's been going to school to become a social worker, and the teams that go over there have been paying for her tuition. And she emailed me and said, "I've decided not to go to college next quarter. I'm going to send you my tuition so you can pay for your medical expenses," which I gratefully denied, but I was very grateful. So then she said, "Well, I'm going to form a prayer team, and we're going to meet every single Saturday night and pray for you." And on December 29th, her prayer team and her pastor called me and prayed for me over the phone, and they said they were still praying for me. So,
our guest is Patrick Owen of Salem, Oregon. He's talking about his story of survivorship from renal cancer. Now, Patrick, in terms of your cancer journey, when did you sense physically that things were changing for the better?
Well, I've been, the leg has been always a problem since, a month before I came down with cancer. I got up one morning, I stepped down on my leg, and I felt a sharp pain just above my knee. And I didn't think too much of it, and it kind of went away and stuff. My wife said, "You got to go see a doctor. You got to go see a doctor." "No, I'm fine. So I probably partially broke it when I got out of bed that morning. And so the leg has been a problem, and it continues to hurt me. I still limp sometimes if I do too much and stuff. So I still have pain there. But health-wise, the cancer never really seemed to have affected me. I never felt sick. The infusions never bothered me. The immunotherapy never bothered me. And so I've never really felt terrible. I fatigue faster than usual, and I'm a little more lethargic. I sleep longer, and I take naps, which I never did before. But other than that, I've always felt pretty good.
There are times in which we have guests and they go through chemotherapy and all the rigors of chemotherapy, but in the end, they say they are glad that they were treated with chemotherapy and what it did to kill the cancer. What about you and immunotherapy? Are you glad that you went that route?
Oh yeah, tremendously. So I started in March of last year, and March 8th of this year, I went in and had another PET scan done, and they found that I had absolutely no cancer anywhere in my body. And when I started off, when they did the first PET scan, I had 4 tumors on my lungs, 1 on my right adrenal gland, 1 on my left adrenal gland, 1 on my left kidney, and a large one behind my spleen, plus some smaller ones, and of course the cancer in my leg. And as of March 8th, they did a PET scan, and all of that was gone, totally gone, and not there. And then my 30 years ago, I had a large tumor on my left kidney, and they watched it for 6 years. Every 6 months, they did a CAT scan, and for 4 years, and then for 2 years, once a year, I'd go in and have a CAT scan, and it never changed, it never grew, and so that they thought the tumor was benign, there was no reason to watch it, and I think that was the source of my my cancer, and so the doctor, after the March 8th PET scan, told me that he wanted to have my left kidney removed and the tumor behind my spleen. So June 29th, I went in and they took that tumor out of behind my spleen. They took out my kidney and they did a biopsy on it. And a couple of weeks later, I went in to see my oncologist, and he was absolutely, totally amazed. He said there was absolutely no cancer in those tissues at all, the kidney or the tumor behind my spleen, and I was totally cancer-free. And he says, I've never seen this happen. Because originally when I went in, he told me, you have 18 months to 2 years, but you're in pretty good health, so I expect you to live longer. And I read someplace else that people with my diagnosis, the survival rate is 5% to 14%. And he goes, I hate to tell you that you're cured because I've never had this happen before. But he goes, and we're going to continue doing the immunotherapy for another year to make sure it doesn't come back.
Considering how much you've overcome and the numbers that you just provided, the percentage possibility of survival, taking all that into consideration, Patrick, these days, how grateful are you?
Oh, phenomenally so. Yeah. Grateful for all the support and all the love that I've had. It's just been tremendous. My wife has been phenomenal. And so there's a couple things that we've done to help enhance the immunotherapy. One is I went to a naturopath and I had 10 infusions of vitamin C, which vitamin C builds up your immune system. So last fall, September, October, I did that. And then I also did a bunch of research, and I've been taking 80 supplements a day with things, most of the things that fight cancer. And so they're all supplements, and take 25 plus pills 3 times a day. And then one of the major things I think that really contributed is I went on the Budwig diet. Bud like in Budweiser, and wig like a wig. And the Budwig diet, if you Google that and take a look at it, there's people that swear they got rid of their cancer by doing nothing else but doing the Budwig diet. And the Budwig diet, cancer feeds on sugar. And so I have been sugar-free now for over a year and a half. And so anyway, absolutely no sugar and very low carbohydrates. Everything's natural, grass-fed beef. They don't, no pork, which is kind of hard. I've been sneaking in some bacon. No shellfish. I can eat regular fish, but no, shellfish, bottom feeding fish, that kind of stuff. But the main thing is my wife, I have a sweet tooth, And my wife has learned how to cook totally sugar-free. And she makes me, just this morning, she made me berry cobbler, no sugar, no carbohydrates. and she's also learned to make chocolate chip cookies, totally sugar-free, all kinds of desserts and everything. So yeah, so she's been just been a huge blessing. And our prayer group loves it because she comes with gluten-free, sugar-free desserts to our prayer meetings. So, yeah, but part of the Budwig diet is everything's organic, grass-fed, beef, just as natural as you possibly can get.
So. That sounds very healthy. Now, yeah. I want to now, Patrick, you had trotted out some numbers earlier when you were told about your chance of survival. Now I want another number from you. If pre-diagnosis could be considered 100% these days, physically, in terms of skiing and anything else that you want to do physically, how close are you to 100%?
I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure. And the reason is, I think as far as my cancer goes, it's close to 100% as you can get. I keep having x-rays done on my leg, and the orthopedic says it's healing but not healed. So I still have a big chunk of bone missing out of that leg. The rod holds it secure, so I'm not gonna break it again because of the big, huge rod that's in the middle of it. But it's healing and not healed. She said it may not ever fully heal up. I really want to go back to skiing, and so I'm still praying that my leg will heal up. I still have pain there. It's mild, it's not too bad, but it's not 100%. And one other thing is, I forgot to mention, I did have radiation on that femur when I got back, and radiation also kills the cancer, but it also kills the bone cells, and it slows up the healing process. So I'm waiting for my leg to heal.
But do you think there could be one day in which you would at the very least be back on the bunny slope?
I'm sure hoping so. Yep, I'm counting on it.
Okay, Patrick, we're going to wrap up now, and whereas we begin our interviews from the same place, we like to end from the same place. Imagine, if you would, that you encountered somebody who had just been diagnosed with renal cell carcinoma, and they're about to embark on this arduous journey. If you had a message for them, there might be a lot of parts to the message, but if there was one part of the message that stands out above all others, what would you share with that person?
Well, prayer to me has been one of the most important things. I think God answered a lot of prayers. But from a physical standpoint, immunotherapy. It's a new therapy. It's only now 6 years old. It was 5 years old when I started. And, immunotherapy is, I think, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And then the Budwig diet. I think that it's also phenomenal. So those three things. You asked for one. I gave you three.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right, Patrick, that's going to wrap things up. We want to thank you very much for your time, and you're sharing a story that I have no doubt will hit home with somebody who has just been diagnosed with renal cancer, or somebody who knows somebody who has been so diagnosed. So anyway, Patrick Owen, thank you very much for the time. Really appreciate your being with us on Cancer Interviews.
And thank you for doing this and for what you do for the world. I appreciate that really much, very much.
Okay, Patrick, thanks again. And we want to remind you that if you are on a cancer journey or a loved one is, that you are not alone. There are lots of people out there just like Patrick who are there to help you, and they can help you along your way and make that journey a bit easier. So until next time, we'll see you on down the road.
All right. Lord bless. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information, please visit us online at CancerInterviews.com. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you back here again next time on the Cancer Interviews podcast.